because it'll go right with the PowerPoint. So good evening, Grove family. Tonight we're going to be covering the magical and mundane properties of the native plants and trees of South Florida. So this is going to be a curated selection of the wildlife, of the wild plants that can be found and trees. So it's not going to cover everything, but it'll cover a good selection of ones that you can find from the Keys all the way up to Pensacola. You'll find that Florida is a home to diverse variety of plants and trees that don't always get as much attention as they should. From the flowers that give food, shade, and shelter to local wildlife, to the great trees of Florida that provides us fresh oxygen, shade, nutrients, and provide growth for the ecosystems that thrive throughout the state. As Florida is known as the flowery one, land of flowers, and the Sunshine State, I'll start with several native flower species that can be both useful in everyday use and for magical use. The first flower that we'll be discussing tonight is the sunflower. And with that, it's going to be the beach sunflower and then the swamp sunflower. All right, next slide, please. So to start off with, there's going to be a little bit of mythology for the sunflower. So I'm going to keep it very brief since the main purpose is going to be the mundane and magical properties. But it's good to know a little bit of the mythology and provide some background into the magical uses for the sunflower. So to start off with is the Greek mythology, which is going to tell the tale of the water nymph Pythie, who was in love with Apollo and is said to cause the death of Apollo's lover. And he did not return her love. She went days without food and water and is told to have been transformed into a sunflower. Just keeping it nice, short, and sweet for that, because the full tale, that could be a whole nother class into the mythology behind a lot of the flowers and trees. So. All right, next slide, please. So the beach sunflower, also known as the East Coast dune sunflower, it can be probably found up and down the east coast of Florida. So you can find it from about, I believe it's about Fort Augustine all the way down to the Keys. And the nice thing with the beach sunflower is that it's very popular for gardeners, as it is drought resistant and salt tolerant. So for the houses that are going to be along the coast of Florida, you'll know that the soil there is going to be a lot drier, a lot more salt. It's going to have a lot more of the salt, much more acidic. It's a perennial flower, so it'll last through several years. And as with most sunflowers, it spreads from the sunflower seeds. So the wind helps spread the seeds across the coast. So when you see it, so for example, if you go to like Dania Beach, if you go there, or if you're going on some of the beaches along there, you'll find among the wildflowers, you'll find the beach sunflower. So you'll find it there. And it is good and then for the mundane fur, it is a good flower to have in your garden if you want to attract local birds and butterflies to your garden. It needs full sunlight to grow and to prosper. It spreads the seed through the birds and the wind and is easy to spread over an area. Now, the interesting for the beach sunflower is it's one of the shorter sunflowers, so it's only to about 1 to 2 feet. And it does well in the drier environments. And like most sunflower seeds, the seeds are edible. It can be used in products. So for the mundane, what you'll find from the sunflower, and you could use the beach sunflower, you can use the swamp sunflower, is that you'll find it, you can eat the sunflower seeds. So if you're finding the wild sunflower on the beach, it can be eaten. It can be used in products such as lotions, beauty products, face, hands, can probably grind down and use like sunflower butter. Usually it's a different variety that's more common, which would be commercially grown, but that's a very good possibility for what you can use for mundane purposes. In regards to the magical properties and use of the beach sunflower, it can be used for rituals for sun gods and goddesses. And the best example that I can give there is for Apollo. And one of the suggested use for the sunflower is for fertility. And with that, the sunflower seeds can be in as part of the fertility ritual. You can use it, it's all going to be based on an intention. Another good example is, let's say if you got the sunflower petals, you can put it in for a necklace. That'd be good for like Beltane, for Litha. So during spring and summer festivals, use of the sunflowers, either in a necklace, eating the sunflower seeds, using it in a lotion, or even possibly using the petals in like a tea or bath, can be very useful. It can also be used, the sunflower, if it's grinded, if it's made into an oil, it can be used for cooking kitchen magic, or even as like a sunflower tea for solar rituals. These can also be used for good luck, protection, or if you wish to acknowledge the Fae. It is rumored that a mixture of flowers related to the sun can be used to better acknowledge or to see their presence. Now that one's more of folklore related. So that one there, that's more folklore, and with anything with the Fae, you just gotta be cautious with its use. Next slide, please. Yeah, sorry about that.
All right.
Now for the swamp sunflower, unlike the beach sunflower, the swamp sunflower prefers wetter soil. So the damp, moist soil is going to be much better for it. You're going to find it more along areas like the wetlands, swamplands, so more like the Everglades. You're going to find it more along the rivers, swamps. Let's see for that one. These sunflowers love moisture, so if you have an area of land that tends to be wet, then the swamp sunflower will be a great one for your garden. Similar to the beach sunflower, it's great for the attracting the wildlife, so you'll attract bees, butterflies, local small mammals. It's a great pollinator plant, similar to the beach sunflower. It'll be spread by the wind, by local critters, eating the seeds. And so on to the next flower for native flower, and that's going to be a couple different violets. So to give a little brief introduction, it's going to be in the mythology for violets. So for Greek, we have Attis, violet sprout where he died. Io, women turned to cow by Hera. And the tears of the women that were turned to cows sprouted violets. And then, of course, the most famous example that I can think of is Persephone, when meeting Hades for the first time, was picking violets. Now, that's another piece of mythology that would be great to have a class on, because I'm sure you could go deep into the history of Hades and Persephone. So Florida has 4 varieties of violets that are native and found across the state. There's the sand violet, there's the blue violet, Walter violet, and the bog white violet. So on the first picture that we have there is going to be that one's going to be the blue violet. Next slide, please. Then you're going to have the bog white violet. Then you have Walter's violet, and then the sand violet. The sand, next slide, please. The sand violet can be found in almost 48 counties within Florida and is commonly found in woodlands and forests. The sand violet prefers the soils to be moist and is typically found blooming in spring, and the green leaves can be spotted in the winter. So during the spring, that's when you're going to see the actual flower itself. And during the winter time, you'll see the bright green. You'll see the bright green leaves. Some mundane uses, so the mundane properties for the leaves would be that it can be used in a tea. Now, for this one is more Native American roots. So these ones is going to be, so for example, you can boil the leaves for use for headaches, pain related to headaches, or the boiling of the roots for relief from boils. Now, for the common blue violet, leaves can be used for salad. It's high in vitamin A and vitamin C. The flowers can be used for candies and jellies. Attracts birds. And for that one, they have for the common violet, that one has glossy heart-shaped leaves and tends to be about 6 to 10 inches. For the bog white violet, it can be found in marshes, bogs, and other wetlands. It blooms in early winter and through the summer and has sweet-smelling flowers that will attract bees, butterflies, and small mammals. Now, for the violets, they're from full sun to full shade. So you can use them in almost anywhere in your garden. And for that one, for the bog, now specifically for the bog white violet, it must be kept in wet, moist soil. It can grow from 2 to 6 inches. And then the last one to cover, the Walter's violet, is a native wildflower that can be found in the moist woodlands, forests, and rocky ledges. That one has round leaves, trailing stems, and the lighter bluish purple flowers. That one is a partial shade to full shade flowers. And the mundane uses of the violet can be to use it to soothe respiratory and digestive systems. So for that, they're talking about putting the leaves, like for example, the leaves and petals of the common violet into hot water, let it soak for a bit, and drinking the tea will help to soothe the digestive system or for the respiratory system. So it helps to soothe them. So for example, if you're feeling really stuffed up, it can help, because with that, the violets from the research that I've done is showed to have anti-inflammatory properties. Now, for magical uses, these violets can be used in beauty spells. An example, now here's one this one's a little bit more of a classic example for it, is that it can be used to soak violets in goat's milk. And to apply the concoction to your face or other body parts to enhance the vitality of your skin and increase the glow of your skin. Putting violets under your pillow can help to increase the power of dreams and can be used for divination. So violets is a very popular flower and has a great many uses. You can wear a leaf of a violet for protection, such as in a string-tied bag or a necklace with a pouch, as an example. You can take a bath with water infused with violets and other ingredients that supports your intentions. So if you're going for one for either like feminine magic, healing, protection, or even for something simple as like stress relief, or if you're trying to regain focus, improve intuition. You can combine, so for example, if you're going with the bath option, you can combine it with like lavender. You can combine it with, trying to think what else, lavender. You can combine it with other wildflowers just to relax, to soothe. It really depends on your intention. So violets is a flower that's it's very useful. You can go from a good example. Now, here's one that I found for a sample ritual that you can do with the violets. And what you can do with the violet is that you can do a healing spell. So, for example, if you have someone in your family or someone in the community that's sick, the example that was given was that purple paper, purple candle, purple paper, fresh violets, black pen, scissors, and to have like a vase that the violets are in. And what you would do is you would light the purple candle with the intention for healing. You would have everyone that's there for the ritual write on the purple paper their well wishes for the person and to imbue the intention of healing for them. So then you would have a white yarn or string that you attach all those purple papers to the vase or jar of the live violets, and then you would give that to that person to heal. So for that, you would write out the name of the person, get a well message, think of the healing they need as you write out your message, and then you could personalize it with a healing chant, either that or have the image of them in your mind as you're doing the healing ritual. All right, next slide, please. Perfect. The next flower that we have is the state flower of Florida, the orange blossom. This one's a good one for that. I could have gone into a lot in the orange tree and covering citrus overall, but I figured just to keep it to the orange blossom to keep it simple. The orange blossom, it can be found growing on orange trees throughout central and some areas of South Florida, small white flowers that grow along the orange trees. The leaves of the orange blossom can be boiled to make like an orange tea or orange flavor tea. Small white flowers that grow along the flowers are very fragrant and can be used for perfumes or citrus scented oil fragrance. Orange blossoms have a calming and anti-inflammatory effect. You can use the dried blossoms in your bath or apply to your skin to brighten and relax the skin. It is said for magical use that the orange blossom can be used for a bath soak, and based on your intention, it can be used for healing, fertility, prosperity, or faithfulness, self-love. You can pair the dried orange blossom with other herbal or flowers or scents to further enhance your bath towards your intention. We can also focus on the other parts of the orange tree, such as utilizing of the orange, which is high in vitamin C and can be used in fertility, prosperity, or healing spells. So a good example of it is even if you can't find the orange blossom in the flower form, you can always get it in like the essential oil. So if you were to use it for like a bath, you just want to use a very little amount of the orange blossom.
Pass that around.
Yep. We're going to pass around to everyone. The orange blossom. So that'd be. So that'd be. So that'd be a great example. Yeah, it gives it a little bit. It gives it a little bit less of a strong citrus sense, which I kind of like that they kind of combine it.
They only, but in here they're only in season, which we found out yesterday. Or they're only in season in the off season of the northern season. So right now, like whereas like around this time would be around the time where they would be in season for like up north.
Okay,
It's the exact
so
opposite.
it's not too hot, they're not for too hot weather.
Yeah, that's what we found out yesterday.
And isn't the orange blossom that actually it smells strong and weird when sometimes when you're driving through the
It's gonna,
with it and you're like,
it's what
what
helps.
is that? There now, and it's actually orange blossom.
you're smelling the orange blossom and you're smelling the oranges. It's got like a nice mixture. Cause we used to have, I don't know if they still have them around for South Florida still. But I remember if you're going up towards the north, as you're driving through, you'll smell the orange groves.
But it's like too much.
You go down.
It's strong. It's strong. I know people drive
We're
into
talking about
it.
oranges, windows, it just smells like oranges from miles.
Yeah, I don't know.
Drop the can.
For me, it's like, oh, it's oranges. I like oranges. I'm gonna buy that for my humans. But that one smells good.
Yeah.
That one smells very nice.
Yeah, this one, I think the good thing is with the essential oil. I think the nice thing with that is they help to go ahead and
Mm-hmm.
the nice thing is with that, it's not so overpowering because if you have the actual flower with you, because that's taking the essence from it, but if you have the actual flower, it's very, very fragrant.
Clean and
Mhm.
soothing. I can see,
I feel like I should get myself a bottle of that.
right? No,
Yes.
No,
I can soothe myself.
I get those to put and drop in my floor.
That's what I got.
And you power wash them, yes.
Yeah, that
And
one's.
get the whole house smelling.
I know, it's safer than using the pine soil stuff. Anyway,
so,
let's continue.
so the next one's gonna be a fun one that I'm sure a lot of folks have seen, but now that'd be more commercially is the orchids. So orchids of Florida, so the nice thing about this. So the orchids of Florida, Florida is home to at least 106 native orchid species. Now, unfortunately, from the research I've done, about 50 something of them is now endangered. But some of the common ones that can be found in the wild are the spider orchid. They combined a couple of them under the term grass pink orchid, the cigar orchid, the butterfly orchid, and then there's the rare ghost orchid. Next slide, please.
Where can you see the ghost orchid?
So on the screen there, we got a good example of them. So the spider orchid's the first one. The second one is an example of the pink, one of the pink orchids. And then we're gonna have the cigar orchids, the third one, the third picture right there is gonna be the cigar orchid. And then next slide, please. And then the next one we have there is going to be those ones there is gonna be the ghost orchid, and then the butterfly orchid is gonna be, I think on the next slide, it's gonna be the butterfly. Those is the ghost orchid, or no, sorry, yeah, it's the ghost orchid is the one that's to the left, and then the butterfly orchid is the one on the right. The spider orchid produces a spike covered with spider-like flowers. Like many orchids, it is an air plant. And it grows up in the air and clings to branches. The spider orchid can be found. The most common place that can be found in is in the Everglades National Park, and it is endangered. Grass pink orchids are the orchids that can be found in meadows, flatwoods, and prairies. So that one's gonna be a bit more common. That one's 4 different species. For time's sake, I just went ahead and keep in the general term for it. That one would be a good one if you want to do further, if you want to search into it more, I'll give you the specifics for the 4 different types for the orchid. But that one's more commonly found. And then the next one's going to be the cigar orchid, also known as the bee swarm orchid, and can be found in the southern area of Florida. A single plant can be as large as 5 feet across and have more than 500 flowers.
Wow.
Yeah,
Great, okay.
I want that.
yeah. Unfortunately, the picture doesn't do justice for the
You got that one, yeah?
yeah, it doesn't do justice to the size of them because unfortunately the ones that they give you for the pictures that you can find, they focus in on the flower to show you that looks like a cigar.
Each with the cell and the cell in the bigger
Yeah, Unfortunately, with the bigger pictures for that, then you can't really tell the type of orchid, because then with the zoom out,
Yeah.
you just see a little bit of the flowers, but you don't see the shape. And that can be found in the swamps and the wetlands of Florida. Now, the most famous one is the ghost orchid. And that one is discussed in the book, The Orchid Thief by Susan Orlean. And it discusses the hunt for this rare flowers. The ghost orchid is a leafless and tends to only produce 1 or 2 flower spikes. Now in Florida, the location that has some of this orchid is called the Corkscrew Sanctuary, and it's located in Collier County. And they have it set up where they got a telescope set up to view the rare orchids. So you're not even able to go near it because of how rare it is. So they got it set up where you can view it on a telescope.
They don't want you to kill it.
Yeah. Or seal it.
That too,
And then
especially.
And then the last of the orchids is the Florida butterfly orchid. And that one's considered the fanciest of the native growing orchids of Florida, with its brights. Now that one's going to have bright, small yellow flowers and little colorful butterfly looking blooms. This orchid can be found across the state, except in Broward County. Broward County, they've got a couple of spots that local wildlife and plant conservationists are working to get it, like either in people's like gardens, their lawns. But usually you can find that more up north for the butterfly orchid. And for that one's great for butterflies, bees. Now, orchids, how you can use it for spells. It can be used for bonding or to strengthen relationships. The drying of the orchid flower can be placed into a necklace with the intention of strengthening connections with another, or that can be used in a spell for remembrance of those who have moved on before. So it really depends on intention, because for orchids, a lot of the orchids, they more focus on like love spells or relationship spells. But as we all know, that the target for that, you gotta make sure that they are accepting of it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Either that, or if you're doing it for yourself, you can even do like for self-love or to love yourself.
Basically, don't attract what you. Be careful what you.
Never summon what you cannot banish.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Mhm.
careful what you wish for.
Now, the nominal properties of orchids, the flowers can be used in a lotion or water to enhance and beautify the skin. The flowers can attract local wildlife and bees and the butterflies. That can be beneficial for gardening local ecosystem. You can utilize the flowers and scents to make oils or fragrances that will help relieve stress. Additional magical uses can be for love, fertility, memory, or focus spells, and willpower spells or rituals. Now, the interesting thing is that there's a color association for orchids. Now, this doesn't all apply to the wild ones that can be found, but you can also apply it to the commercial ones. So if you're looking for, for example, red. So if you have a red orchid, if you're one to focus on passion and strength, you would want to get an orchid with red flowers. If you want to focus on grace, joy, and femininity, you'll want to get a pink orchid. White orchids can be used for remembrance, innocence, purity, which is probably also why it's popular to find orchids around, like, just to give an example, like Easter, they would have like the white orchids available as for Easter, because they would consider that part of purity, just as an example from one of the more religious aspects. But I know when you see towards Easter season that you'll find it there. So that's an example in one way, but For white, you can use it for remembrance, you can use it for innocence. Purple can be used for admiration, respect, dignity, and royalty. Orange, enthusiasm, boldness, and pride. Yellow, friendship and joy. Green, good fortune. And green is good fortune and good health. So you got a lot of different options for that. For the native ones is more of the focus on, usually tends to be more of the focus for love and fertility, but you can really find an orchid that can apply to any type of magic that you're looking to do. Now we're going to move on to the trees of Florida. Now I'm keeping this one kind of short for that because I know with the flowers, it kind of dragged on. So for the trees, I'm keeping it to 3 different types. We're going to cover the Florida silver palm, we're going to cover the slash pine, and then we're going to cover the mangroves. So for the Florida silver palm is a common palm tree that can be found across the state. And the largest natural growth of the Florida silver palm is located in Bahia Honda State Park, which if I remember right, that's in the Keys. In Key Largo, thank you. This tree can grow from 6 feet tall to 19 feet tall, and that it grows about 4.7 inches a year.
Is that a tree or a palm?
Palm tree.
Palm tree.
That's going to be one of the ones that you more see for the, you can probably find them for either like yards used. These are going to be one of the ones that don't have coconuts. So they'll have just the palm fronds. They're more palm fronds. It's got the berries to it, but they don't have coconuts. It's got the berries that can feed local wildlife, provides ample shade. The palm fronds of the silver palm can be used for cleansing of space or can be used in rituals that are required for protection or dispersing spells. So anything cleansing, if you're trying to clear the space, the circle for a ritual, if you're using it for cleansing of new homes. You can clean your new house. So if you're moving into a new space, you don't know what's the energy or what spirits or what's there. It's good to just go ahead and to cleanse. And the palm frond, I just think for Florida, it's a great example using a natural resource of what you can find in Florida is the palm trees.
It's a good besom.
Exactly, or besom.
And they're headed too, so you can wax them too. Just like,
Don't get ideas.
Now,
I'm not
one of
gonna
the
do many
normal uses that can be done is the berries can be used. Well, this could be normal, like a normal property, a mundane one, or magical. Is for the berries that can be used for healing. Berries can be used as part of a healing ritual. So that's for the berries, if you use it, it's going to be good for like the vitamin C. It's going to be a lot of the properties for that matter. So that could be mundane, or you can use it for magic side for healing rituals, where you can either put it into, you could use water, you can use, trying to think of other common uses.
So what else do they do with the berries?
Maybe you can make it into oils, candles.
so
So those berries are not toxic?
For that one,
They're not poisonous?
I mean, if you,
No, they're not toxic.
no.
No.
Aren't we have duck seed?
If it's on the palm, then it's not. If it's on a little bush, it is, right?
Yeah, the palm trees,
But they're not really soft berries either, so. they're
no,
really-
not gonna be
They're
soft.
not toxic, but they're not very moist.
That's why
Nothing to
probably
enjoy.
better, it's probably better to use it more like the waters, or if you're gonna grind them up and maybe like.
Let's
Maybe a
hope
pan.
they're essential oil to eat them, okay? Let's just
Okay.
leave it there.
if you use it like an essential oil, like put in like a diffuser.
You probably make it for the scent. You probably grind it up. And to use the scent
Like a
for it,
oil and bustle type.
Now for that, one of the good examples for that is if we focus more on like green witches, they can use the berries and the plant of these trees, of the palm trees, to bring more wildlife to their yard.
Mhm.
To their yard or to their garden, their sacred
Ducks
space.
love 'em.
Who the berries making of trees, like seeds.
That's what they are, yes, yeah.
Ah,
So you gotta keep pulling the trees. You don't want them.
Yeah, you don't want too many of them, otherwise you're gonna end up with a whole
With an entire grove.
I'm not a pan.
nice little row of palm trees. Now, next one we're gonna be covering is gonna be the slash pine. Now, something interesting that I found for this one here is it's very common across Florida. Now, for this one, interesting thing with that is that it can grow up to 100 feet tall.
It's a proper pine.
I've never,
It's a proper pine tree.
never seen one.
Now, the interesting for the slash pine compared to like the, what is it, conifer pine?
Mhm.
Is that the pine cones that you'll find from that is gonna be those little. Like, you know how when you can find for hobbies, sometimes you'll find the really small pine cones versus the giant conifer pine cone. So the ones for the slash pines, they're these little pine cones. So for that. Yes, it's gonna be those little pine cones. Survives well in swampy and well-watered areas. The pine cones and pine needles can drop from this tree, and it can be used from this tree. Now, the pine cones and pine needles. Sorry, I'm gonna go back to just the properties for it. Fast growing, provides great shade and shelter from the sun. The trees. The sap and the needles cones have a great smell and fragrance that can be used for multiple everyday uses, such as for candles, oils, or for incense. Now, the magical properties of the slash pine is that the needles can be used in a healing spell. Now, the example that I found for it was to boil the pine needles in hot water with tea leaves, citrus, or other herbs, and it can be used to apply to the skin. Now, I'd be careful with it just in case of any allergies. If you do use it on the skin, a lot of time for that. I'd apply to like a small area. The pine cone is great for purification, luck, or for fertility ritual spells. And one of the examples that was given is a pine cone. A pine cone can be hung around the house for the intention of bringing luck and prosperity to the house. And you can use the pine needles and smaller pine cones in a ritual to anoint or purify a house. For example, if you have moved and wish to draw out the negative energy. In some cultures, placing a pine cone under a pillow can bring great news in the future, such as new offspring. So for the fertility side, from what I found for that was the placing of a pine cone under a pillow as a common example of if you're trying to bring about new life or in the upcoming year. And then the next slide, please. So to move on to the mangrove. So for the mangrove, it's key to the health of the ecosystem for Florida, especially for Florida's coast. The three types of mangroves that you'll find in Florida are the red mangrove, the black mangrove, and the white mangrove. An easy example of where you can find the red mangrove are all along the east coast of Florida. And one common spot that you can find it is if you go to Dania Beach, you can go to Dr. Von D. Mizell Eula Johnson State Park, which is right off the coast of Dania Beach. If you go to the state park there, If you go right along the intercoastal, you'll see a nice little selection of the red mangroves. And the interesting for the red mangroves is that if you look at the example picture, or if you've seen it, if you go to that park or along the beach, you'll sometimes see them, is that they look like a person walking, like they got this nice long roots, like legs.
Yeah, they feed on the water.
You got their feet in the water. And the great thing is if you see them, you can see a whole ecosystem right under those roots. You'll see right among the clear, shallow water, you'll see the nursery of several small fish. You'll see a nice selection of plants under the water there. So it's a very nice example for that. And mangroves overall, the mundane properties for it, it's great for preventing erosion to the soils for the beach or to prevent erosion. It helps to keep the structure for the coastline. Because otherwise, if not, we'd have a lot more flooding, we'd have a lot more erosion of the sands, which if you've been to Dania Beach, you can see huge examples of erosion of how bad it is if you don't have anything, natural barriers like the mangroves. If you look at all the sand, over the years, they've had to bring in a ton of sand just to keep the beach, because otherwise you'd be going right along to almost residential areas in some areas of Dania. The red mangrove is a wind pollinator. One of the potential magical properties of the red mangrove. Next slide, please. So one of the magical properties for the red mangrove is that you can regain inner strength and be at ease among the mangroves. So what I found from my research for the mangroves is for the red mangrove, if you need to recenter yourself, either grounding or if you're at a spot where you're uncertain, if you go among the mangroves, so you can either like meditate, if you go take a day to one of these parks that have the mangroves, like for example, what was Johnny Lloyd, but now Von D, Mizell, Eula Johnson State Park. If you go there, you can find along the pathway, you can step off to the side. You can't be in among the mangrove, but close enough that you'll be able to meditate and regain your strength there. And from what I've seen from being to that park, among the mangroves, when you're going down that path, you get a nice sense of calming as you're walking along them.
Mosquitoes in this one.
Those mosquitoes are gonna be no matter where you go.
I can imagine, you can get out in between those things in the water.
Usually-
I can really feel them.
Usually, the earlier you go to the park, the better, because if you get to evening times, yes, you'll find the mosquitoes.
I call it bug hour.
Yeah,
So
you'll
it's
see
now
it during the
20 hour.
evening, but if you go during the daytime, early morning, because for Dania Beach, what's known for is you get all the snowbirds, so you get a lot of the folks from Canada. They don't want to go to the party beaches, so where they go to Dania Beach. They go right to that state park because you can spend all day there. Dania Beach. It's very lovely, though you want to avoid it during the popular season. So if you're going during one of the big holidays, like Memorial Day, I would recommend avoiding.
Don't go anywhere more late.
Soy río, manches, tú no viajas en Dania.
Can you go there?
Yeah, it's lovely there. It's one of my favorite beaches because Dania Beach is so much calmer. Because all the other party beaches along the East Coast, a lot of them is much for the party scene, drinking. I like Dania Beach because it's so much more
It's much more families. You see a lot more families.
families, it's a lot more calmness. You don't find as much destruction in the areas for that. Because you don't get as much of the crowds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A nude beach. Nude.
I think that's
And the
Farther
mangrove.
south.
Yeah, I think it's farther south.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit.
Lower, okay.
Mhm.
Then the next one that we're gonna have is going to be,
Wow.
is gonna be the white mangrove. Now, you can find the white mangrove among parts of the intercoastal, is well known for its white bell-shaped flowers and its yellow-green roots. Helps protects the coast from erosion, great home to many fish and underwater plants species. Now, one of the ones for that, now for the white mangrove, that's gonna be right in the middle of the intercoastal. You'll find
So they go in the water.
yeah, it grows in the middle of the water. For that one there, I'm trying to see, it says for that. I don't think I have the exact size for that one there.
What is that flower that grows in the water? The
Lotus.
huh?
Lotus?
No. Lotus.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
and one of the ones for that, for the magical properties. Or one of the magical things that you can do for that is like if you want to do like an eco protection spell or environmental spell. Or one related to water or healing of nature, that'd be a great example. And then for the last but not least, we're gonna have the black mangrove. Now, the black mangrove is the third type that can be found along the coast. Now, this mangrove is interesting because unlike the red mangrove with the very long, thick roots, you'll see for this one, they've got thin, pencil thin. So think about probably like a very thin pencil for the roots going down into the water. And the interesting thing is that for that, it can grow to be about 33 to 49 feet tall. But as you can see from the example picture, most of that's underwater.
yeah. It's a little island.
It's on.
It probably holds the soil that way. Water, very skinny threads.
And then,
Show is anchored well.
and then to leave it on the last note for it, these species of mangroves are vital to our homeland and are what help keeps the coast ecosystem live and growing. Without the mangroves, the beach coastal areas would be faced with much harsher erosion from the tides. The ecosystem that lives among the roots would begin to disappear and would have a devastating consequence for our waters.
Nice.
Is there any questions or?
Oh, yeah, I was gonna ask about, a certain violet, on my phone about that's healing, or is it just a violet, or you were talking about violets in general?
For that, the four that was covered was in regards to the,
Like digestive uses, a violet,
for that one. I didn't mention digestive for violets, so that would be a possibility. It really depends on.
Which one was
What
it?
you're
You
using
mentioned
for-
a flower, you mentioned a
For
flower that was
digestive?
no, I wrote it down, I'm pretty sure it was violet.
For that, oh, I'm sorry, you're right, it is violet for that. For that one, so for that, usually what was recommended for that was the boiling of the petals and the leaves in a tea form, and would be just drinking it for that.
Which lily was it?
For the violet,
Violet.
so that was overall. The most common one that you'd find for the violet is the blue violet, which would be the common blue. So you'd find
Color
that,
purple.
It's like a dark.
yeah,
blue.
it's like a bluish purple.
Wait,
The closest example I could find for the violet is this. This is the one that's more of. This one's more of similar to the blue violet. The ones that you'd see for the other violets was the sand violets, which got the very big bluish purple petals. And then you had the bog white one, which was a nice white violet.
Yeah, that was pretty.
So you can use any violet for digestive?
For that, I would double check just to make sure that it does say that's safe. So the one that I saw for the example for it was for the common blue violet.
Oh, blue violet.
Yeah, was for the common blue violet.
Ann
I would-
has a question online too. Put her hand up. Go ahead, Ann.
Yes, I might have missed it, but I didn't hear the magical properties of the white mangrove or the black mangrove. Did I miss something?
For the white mangrove, so the example I gave for the white mangrove and the black mangrove is going to be very similar for that. Is the white mangrove and the black mangrove I gave for the example is environmental spells, rituals, whether you want to do for protecting of the environment. So for example, if you want to focus on the waters of Florida, would be a good example, would be to be among the white mangrove or be in an area where you can see the black mangrove, and would be to do a ritual. So for example, you could do like water protection, or if you want to do just environmental protection for Florida overall. It really depends on the intention that you have there. The other one that I thought was interesting is you could do fertility spells there.
Okay, I guess I just missed the slides. I was looking for them. Okay, thank you.
Well, the mangrove is one of the consorts of Lady Florida, so that would make sense.
And you could use water water with that.
Yeah, that is true.
I do suggest
Yeah.
in there.
And that's why I kind of skipped over the like the mythology relating to the mangrove, because I think is it Alvin Birch that does the talk about Lord Mangrove and Lady Florida.
Yeah, it's part of the hurricane ritual. Lady Florida, Lord Mangrove will be here next week.
So basically, he did not want to take away the limelight.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, I'm tuning in next week for it because
Well, Lady Florida and Lord Mangrove, they love everybody to talk about them.